Situation number 3. You are driving through a strange city. Another car comes head on and crashes into the car you were driving. 3 minutes later, a police officer on the scene asks you for your home phone number and where you are going in the city. You cannot remember either. And so I share this with you because then I'm going to talk to you. So think about like how you might respond in this situation. And I can share a personal experience where I was in a car accident, and I do remember the officer asking me my phone number and how old I was, and I had a difficult time recalling both. So I want to explain to you sort of what is happening, and this is connected to this, again, this idea of building community, creating safety. So can we go to the next slide? And then you can keep going and show all the information. So I'm just going to explain sort of what is happening in your brain. So when there's no sense of danger, the information travels on a slow pathway to a sensory relay station called the thalamus, and onward to the hippocampus, which is learning and memory, and then to the cerebral cortex, which is the center of long-term memory and thinking. However, when there's a sense of danger, the data triggers mechanisms for survival. The sensory input goes directly to the thalamus relay station, which sends it directly to the amygdala, which is the center of all fear, threat, and passion, which zings to the internal regulator called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus shouts at the pituitary adrenal glands to release the stress hormone called cortisol. So that the hormone zings through the body via the bloodstream and activates the fight or flight. So what happens is emotional balance is totally destroyed. And so I share this with you because I want you to know how we're affected when we're not feeling safe. And so Tribes is really about creating a safe learning environment for students to learn and play. And so if we don't feel safe, can you go to the next slide, please? So if we're not able to, if we don't feel safe, then our brain is not going to be in balance and we're not going to think well. So then the question becomes, how do we create a safe learning environment? And so now I'm going to show you this Tribes Trail, which I think is a great illustration. It speaks to what happens in groups, right? So on the far left, right, there are lots of individuals, and they're coming into a situation. We all come to this school, you know, as individuals. You come in as individuals, and then what happens is we need to create a sense of belonging, a sense of inclusion. So as educators, we do a lot of pair sharing. We create lots of subgroups, and this is where students are able to present themselves, start expressing needs and expectations, being acknowledged for who they are, and it's a great place where we start to create connections and inclusion. And I'm going like this because a lot of us, this is our sign for connections here at BSI. And so when we start to create opportunities for students to know who each other are, develop interests, find common things that they have in common, then they start to feel a little safer. And so as we travel along this Tribe Trail, you know, just like many people, once the shyness goes away and you start to present more of yourself, you get to this phase of influence, right? So then we're valuing differences, we're setting goals, managing conflict, making decisions, and celebrating diversity. So this is where we're showing more of ourselves, and when we do that, sometimes conflict arises. What I want you to notice is at the bottom left, right, these, you can't really read it very well, but those are the Tribes agreements, right? So it's attentive listening, appreciations, no put downs, mutual respect, doing your personal best, safety with body and heart. So those are the agreements that guide everything that we do together as a community. So whether I'm in the cafeteria, on the playground, in the classroom, those are the expectations. And so as we travel along this trail, our goal is to get to this place of community. And it's not like a destination and once you're there, that's the end. But when we get to community, we're working creatively and collaboratively together. But we're just sort of meandering back and forth along this trail because like with any group, you know, you're constantly having to, I guess, continue to create connections, to continue to figure out ways to solve conflict. So it's just part of being in relationship, right? The more of yourself you show, you know, sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't agree, but there's a way that we can interact and share ideas in a respectful way. So this is really a great visual that illustrates the process that groups go through and how we try to get to this place of inclusion or community. Knowing all along that those community agreements are at the heart of this process. Okay. Oh, and so the next slide. So this is just another bigger illustration of what our community agreements are. And so we say, you know, I listen attentively with my eyes, ears, and heart. I will show mutual respect. I will show appreciations, no put downs. So again, being mindful of our words and the language that we use. I will do my personal best. And then the right to pass. I always have the right to pass. It's the letter L for later. And all that means is that I get to have some time to think about what is being asked of me as a learner. So if your child comes home and says I don't have to do my homework because I have the right to pass, that's not true, right? It's like when we're in a community and a teacher is asking a question, and you know, I know this is true for myself, like I need some time to think about what I want to say. And so it creates safety by students knowing that, you know what, I can do this, or I can say I pass until I have had some time to think about and formulate my thoughts. So that's another way of creating safety so that, you know, that fight or flight doesn't happen to students. And so the next slide, and you can actually just bring them. I'm just going to ask you to bring them all up. So the next slide talks about group impact, right? We're at Brooklyn School of Inquiry. We give students lots of opportunity to collaborate, to work together. And there's a lot of research that supports the idea that students work together collaboratively and how that impacts learning. So I'm just going to explain what's happening here in this graph. Okay, sorry, with my glasses. Okay, so this is a graph, and it's a report by David and Roger Johnson that describes 3 learning conditions. And this is 84 third graders. So an intensive 5-week unit on transportation was taught to 3 classes, but in different processes. Classroom A used the conventional individualistic learning method of studying alone and filling out worksheets. So that's A. B and C, they used cooperative learning groups with students working together, each group completing worksheets. So they're in groups and they're completing worksheets. In addition, Group C spent 5 minutes processing their work and setting goals for improvement. So that's the difference. And so in Classroom A, the individualist approach had marginal gains of 50 to 65%, and the retention of knowledge dropped by 58% after 3 weeks. So they retained very little after 3 weeks. In Classroom B, they used cooperative learning, no processing, and their gains moved 50 to 75%, and they retained about 73% of their learning. In Group C, their achievements were as high as 87%, and there was no loss in retention, even after 3 weeks. So they retained all that they had learned. Because again, working cooperatively, setting goals, reflecting, and then setting goals for learning. And so this is, I feel like, a great illustration of the importance of group work and how we learn from one another, and the importance of reflection and setting goals. But in order, again, going back to that Tribes Trail, in order for students to work together and collaboratively, there have to be expectations about what that looks like. Yes. Okay. So let's go to